These 15 restaurants exploded across the country, then vanished without explanation. No headlines, no outrage, just silence. You've likely walked past their remains without realizing. So what forced these familiar names to disappear so suddenly? But this isn't just about lost restaurants. It's about the quiet collapse of things we thought would last forever. First on our list, Howard Johnson's. Their orange roofs and 28 flavors of ice cream once dominated American highways like nothing before or since. Founded in 1925, this chain became the first truly nationwide restaurant empire when most roadside dining was still a complete gamble. The orange roof wasn't just decoration, it was a promise. See that bright orange glow from miles away? You knew exactly what waited inside. Clean restrooms, consistent food, and those famous fried clams. It was like having a reliable friend at every highway exit, except this friend served ice cream. 28 flavors might not sound impressive today, but back then, most places offered vanilla, chocolate, and whatever hadn't melted yet. Howard Johnson's created an entire ice cream experience. Families would drive extra miles just to let kids choose between flavors like butter pecan and rum raisin. By the 1970s, over 1,000 locations stretched across America. You could order fried clams in Maine and get the exact same taste in California, which was either impressive quality control or terrifying uniformity. Then everything changed. Fast food exploded with 30-second service times. Interstate highways redirected traffic. People wanted speed over experience, convenience over consistency. Howard Johnson's couldn't adapt quickly enough. They were built for a slower America that no longer existed. Of course, not every chain relied on highway visibility to build their brand. Gino's Hamburgers brought genuine sports personality to the burger business when an NFL player launched the chain in 1957. This wasn't some corporate boardroom creation. It started with real passion for good food. The brilliant move was partnering with KFC at many locations. You could get burgers and fried chicken under the same roof, which solved the eternal family dining problem. It was like having your burger and eating chicken too without anyone having to compromise on dinner plans. The restaurants spread across the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast with that authentic feel corporate chains struggle to fake. The food was genuinely good. Fresh ground beef, not frozen patties, combined with KFC's proven chicken recipes. Having an NFL player's name on the sign probably didn't hurt either. Customers figured if the food was good enough for professional athletes, it was good enough for regular people. Marriott bought the chain in 1982, but they weren't interested in running burger restaurants. They wanted prime real estate for hotel development. One by one, profitable Gino's locations got converted or closed down. The chain died not because customers stopped coming. It died because hotels generated more revenue per square foot than Hamburgers ever could. While some chains lost out to real estate deals, others made much bolder marketing choices. Godfather's Pizza launched in 1973 with the most memorable marketing theme in restaurant history. They built an entire pizza empire around organized crime references. Their slogan promised, "A pizza you can't refuse," which was either brilliant marketing or questionable judgment. The thick crust pizzas were legitimately excellent, though. These weren't thin, wimpy slices that folded like paper. You needed both hands and possibly a construction permit to lift one slice safely. The cheese stretched longer than most people's attention spans, and the toppings piled high enough to require navigation equipment. During the 1980s, over 1,000 locations served these monster pizzas across America. The crime theme worked because it was memorable and slightly ridiculous. The thick crust could support more weight than some apartment building foundations, which made every slice a substantial meal. Competition intensified as other chains focused on speed and convenience. Domino's promised 30-minute delivery. Others offered stuffed crusts and new flavors. Everyone was innovating while Godfathers stuck with their thick crust tradition. The chain retreated to Midwest markets where they could still compete effectively. A few hundred locations continue operating today, mostly in smaller towns where thick crust pizza and mafia jokes still resonate. Our next chain built their success on a very different kind of atmosphere. Chi-Chi's opened in 1975, serving American-style Mexican food that made families feel like they were celebrating something special. Fried ice cream and chimichangas became their signature items, creating that festive cantina atmosphere Americans loved. The food wasn't authentic Mexican cuisine, and nobody pretended it was. This was Tex-Mex comfort food designed for American families who wanted something more exciting than burgers, but not so spicy that kids would refuse to eat. It was like Mexican food designed by people who actually understood what American families wanted from Mexican restaurants. The dining rooms buzzed with birthday parties and family gatherings. The fried ice cream alone was worth the trip, because apparently regular ice cream wasn't exciting enough, so they decided to set it on fire and cover it in cinnamon. Then disaster struck in 2003. An outbreak at one Pennsylvania location infected over 600 people and killed 4. The contamination came from improperly handled green onions, but the damage went far beyond one location. Food safety disasters destroy restaurant chains faster than any other business problem. By 2004, every Chi-Chi's in America had closed permanently. While food safety could kill a chain overnight, some restaurants faced much more unusual architectural challenges. Red Barn restaurants opened in 1961 with buildings shaped like actual barns because apparently someone thought American highways needed more agricultural architecture. These big red structures served burgers, fried chicken, and surprisingly innovative salad bars. The barn theme wasn't just decoration, it was practical too. The shape provided lots of interior space while creating instant brand recognition. You couldn't miss eating at the place that looked like it should house cows instead of customers. Red Barn pioneered salad bars when most fast food chains thought vegetables were just burger decorations. The food quality was genuinely impressive. Their fried chicken competed seriously with established chains, and the burgers were thick and juicy. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that some of the best farm-fresh food in America was being served in fake barns next to interstate highways. At their peak, over 400 locations dotted American highways. The restaurants became roadside landmarks that families would specifically seek out during long trips. Multiple ownership changes through the 70s and 80s confused everyone involved. Each new owner wanted to modify the concept or expand faster. By the mid-80s, the last Red Barn had disappeared. Not all chains worried about highway visibility, though. Some picked very different locations entirely. Steamer's Seafood Grill and Bar specialized in bringing fresh seafood to mall shoppers and suburban families during the 80s and 90s. Their steamed clams, thick chowder, and grilled fish gave landlocked Americans a taste of coastal dining without the coastal drive. The mall strategy made perfect sense initially. Families spent entire days shopping and needed convenient places to eat between stores. It was like having New England fishing villages relocated to suburban shopping centers, minus the fishing boats and salty air. The food was surprisingly authentic for a mall restaurant. Steamed clams came fresh and briny with melted butter for dipping. The chowder was thick enough to stand a spoon in, loaded with clams and potatoes. The restaurants proved that you could get decent seafood in landlocked malls, which was either a triumph of modern food distribution or a complete betrayal of everything coastal cuisine stood for. Competition from Red Lobster proved too strong, though. The bigger chain had television advertising, highway locations, and deeper pockets for marketing. They could afford prime real estate and national brand recognition that steamers couldn't match. Mall culture started changing too. Online shopping reduced foot traffic, food courts offered more variety, and people began viewing malls as outdated. By the early 2000s, steamers had completely vanished from American shopping centers. Location wasn't the only way to stand out, though. Some chains borrowed their identity from entirely different cultures. Bennigan's launched in 1976 with an Irish pub concept that had about as much authentic Irish heritage as a box of green-colored cereal. The authenticity wasn't the goal, though. Creating a fun atmosphere for American families was the real strategy. The Monte Cristo sandwich became their legendary signature dish. Ham, turkey, and Swiss cheese between thick bread slices, battered and deep-fried, then dusted with powdered sugar. It was like someone took a perfectly normal sandwich and decided it needed to be dessert and dinner simultaneously. The restaurants featured dark wood paneling, dim lighting, and decorations that suggested Ireland without actually being from Ireland. The Irish atmosphere was about as authentic as a leprechaun selling insurance, but customers loved it anyway. The chain reached over 300 locations worldwide by understanding that Americans wanted the idea of Irish pub culture, not necessarily the reality. They delivered an atmosphere, good food, and memorable experiences. Financial troubles hit during the mid-2000s, though. Rising food costs, increased competition from similar chains, and changing dining preferences hurt profits. Bennigan's filed for bankruptcy in 2008, closing most locations overnight. Cultural themes were one approach, but some restaurants went even bigger with their identity. Lone Star Steakhouse and Saloon opened in 1989 during America's Texas obsession. The restaurants delivered pure cowboy theater with wood everywhere. Texas flags, country music, and servers dressed like rodeo participants. It was like eating dinner inside a country music video, except nobody's truck broke down. The steaks were genuinely excellent, though. Thick cuts, properly seasoned, and cooked to order. Portions were so large they probably qualified as agricultural products rather than restaurant meals. By the mid-2000s, over 250 locations served these theatrical meals to families cosplaying as cowboys. The Texas craze faded as cultural trends shifted. Sales declined through the 2000s and 2010s, and by 2017, most American locations had closed. While some chains relied on themes, others tried leveraging actual celebrity power. Kenny Rogers Roasters launched in 1991 with genuine celebrity involvement from the country music legend himself. The rotisserie chicken was exceptional, slowly roasted with proper seasoning and Southern-style sides. It was like having Sunday dinner at your grandmother's house if your grandmother happened to be a country music star. The restaurants maintained a warm, homey atmosphere with wood tables and Southern hospitality without overdoing country themes. At its peak, over 350 locations operated globally. Having a famous singer's name probably helped. Customers figured if the chicken was good enough for someone who could afford any food in the world, it must be special. American locations struggled with timing, though. Rotisserie chicken requires slow cooking, which conflicted with Americans' demands for faster service. Boston market dominated with speedier service and better locations. By the early 2000s, all American locations had closed, though Asian franchises continued successfully. Celebrity endorsements were one strategy, but some restaurants took an entirely different approach to customer convenience. Whitefront cafeterias operated inside Whitefront department stores during the 60s and 70s, creating a unique shopping and dining combination that modern consumers can barely imagine. You could buy clothes, furniture, and appliances, then sit down for hot meals without ever leaving the building. The cafeteria concept solved practical problems for department store shoppers. Families spent entire afternoons at Whitefront, especially mothers with children who needed multiple departments for different purchases. It was like having school cafeteria convenience with food that people actually wanted to eat voluntarily. The food quality exceeded typical institutional cafeteria standards: hot meals, fresh desserts, and service that let customers see exactly what they were getting before making decisions. The menus featured comfort foods that appealed to families: fried chicken, meatloaf, pot roast, and vegetables that children would actually consume. The concept was brilliant in its simplicity. Why leave the store to eat when you could just go upstairs to the cafeteria, refuel, and get back to shopping? It was like having a gas station for humans built right into the store. Whitefront department stores started failing in the late 70s, though. Discount retailers offered better prices and more convenient layouts. Shopping malls provided greater variety under single roofs. When the stores closed, the cafeterias disappeared with them. Unlike standalone restaurants, they couldn't survive independently because their entire business model depended on customer traffic generated by retail shopping. The cafeteria concept wasn't dead, though. Some chains made it their entire identity. Luby spent over 70 years perfecting cafeteria-style Southern comfort food after opening in 1947. The Luann platter became legendary among customers. Your choice of entree plus 2 sides, all served on those distinctive orange trays that define the entire dining experience. The food quality was genuinely exceptional. Fried chicken with crispy coating and juicy meat, green beans cooked with ham until tender and flavorful, cornbread that was sweet without being dessert, and mac and cheese made with real cheese instead of powder. It was like eating at your Southern grandmother's house if your grandmother could cook for 200 people simultaneously without losing quality. The cafeteria format let customers inspect every dish before making decisions. No surprises, no disappointments, and no wondering what mystery ingredients were hiding under fancy names. The orange trays became as iconic as the food itself. You could spot a Luby's regular from across the dining room by how expertly they balanced their tray while navigating through the cafeteria line. Luby's dominated Texas and surrounding states with over 200 locations at their peak. The restaurants became community gathering places, especially for older customers who appreciated consistent quality, reasonable prices, and familiar foods. Cafeteria dining became associated with institutional food, though, as younger customers grew up eating at faster, more contemporary restaurants. The 2020 pandemic delivered the final blow when social distancing rules made cafeteria-style service nearly impossible to operate safely. American comfort food was one thing, but some chains tried bringing foreign cuisines to fast food. Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips launched in 1969 with a brilliant concept: bring authentic British fish and chips to American customers who had never experienced proper versions of either. The battered cod was crispy outside and flaky inside, the chips were thick-cut and properly seasoned, and even the malt vinegar was imported from England. The chain was named after a British actor who played stereotypical English butlers in old Hollywood movies, which gave the restaurants instant personality and cultural connection. It was like eating fish and chips served by someone who might have worked in fancy English mansions, except the food was actually accessible to regular people. At their peak, over 800 locations served fish and chips across America. The restaurants maintained clean, simple aesthetics that let food quality be the main attraction. No elaborate decorations or complicated themes, just excellent fish, proper chips, and efficient service. The challenge was convincing Americans that fish and chips were actually a meal, and not just what you ordered when the restaurant ran out of everything else. American tastes proved more conservative than expected, though. Fish and chips remained ethnic food to most customers, not mainstream dining options. Practical problems complicated operations too. Fresh fish was expensive and spoiled quickly compared to frozen alternatives. Today, only one standalone location remains in Ohio, serving fish and chips to customers who remember when British food seemed like the next big trend in American dining. Food preferences weren't the only thing that could doom a restaurant. Sometimes the problems were much more serious. Sambo's opened in 1957 and grew to over 1,100 locations by the 70s. But the chain story involves serious social issues that went far beyond typical restaurant business challenges. The restaurant served standard American diner food with reasonable prices and generally good service. The major problem was branding and imagery that included racially insensitive elements connected to harmful stereotypes. During the civil rights era and beyond, these choices became increasingly controversial and offensive to many customers and communities across the country. The pancakes were actually decent and the coffee stayed hot, but no amount of good breakfast food could overcome growing community anger about offensive imagery and branding choices. Protests and boycotts began affecting business in numerous locations. Communities organized pressure campaigns demanding changes to branding and imagery. You could serve the world's best pancakes, but if your restaurant's name and decorations offended entire communities, those pancakes weren't going to save your business. The controversy overshadowed every other aspect of the restaurant operations. Potential customers avoided locations not because of food quality or service problems, but because they refused to support businesses associated with offensive and hurtful imagery. By the 80s, every location had closed permanently. The chain proved that successful food service operations mean nothing if branding alienates the communities you're trying to serve. Most restaurant failures weren't about social issues, though. They were about finding the right customers at the right time. Naugles launched in 1970 when late-night Mexican fast food was still a revolutionary concept in most American markets. Founded by a former Del Taco partner, the chain specialized in serving burritos, tacos, and Mexican-inspired dishes to customers who wanted something different from typical burger joints. The breakfast burritos became legendary among night shift workers, college students, and anyone else who needed substantial food at unusual hours. These weren't wimpy breakfast wraps that fell apart when you looked at them. They were serious burritos that could fuel you through entire graveyard shifts or all-night study sessions. Naugles carved out a specific niche, serving customers that other chains completely ignored. Late-night workers needed food after most restaurants closed. Young adults wanted inexpensive meals that offered more excitement than standard fast food. The beauty was in the simplicity. You could get a hot, filling burrito at 2 in the morning when everywhere else was either closed or serving reheated leftovers. Del Taco acquired Naugles in 1988 and gradually phased out the brand in favor of expanding their own restaurant locations. The decision wasn't based on food quality or customer satisfaction. It was a corporate strategy prioritizing one brand over maintaining two separate identities. The name disappeared for decades until revival efforts began in California during the mid-2010s. Some entrepreneurs who remembered the original chain started opening new locations, proving that good concepts sometimes deserve second chances. Revival stories are rare, though. Most chains that disappeared stayed gone, even when they pioneered ideas that later became huge. Burger Chef opened in 1954 as one of the earliest serious competitors to emerging fast food giants, and for several years, they actually out-innovated their more famous rivals. They introduced kids' meals years before similar concepts existed elsewhere. Their Works bar let customers customize burgers with toppings, which was revolutionary when most fast food was completely standardized. The restaurant served genuinely excellent burgers that competed directly with established chains on both taste and price. The meat was fresh rather than frozen, buns were properly toasted, and French fries were crispy and well-seasoned. It was like having quality fast food before other chains figured out how to mass-produce consistency without sacrificing flavor. By the early 70s, over 1,200 Burger Chef locations operated across America. The chain had mastered fast food operations just as well as their competitors. They understood customer service, efficient kitchen systems, and menu development that satisfied families. The Works Bar was basically the ancestor of every build-your-own concept in modern restaurants, except they thought of it decades before it became trendy. Corporate ownership and financial management created problems, though. Burger Chef changed hands multiple times, with different owners making conflicting strategic decisions. Some focused on rapid expansion, others emphasized cost-cutting. Hardee's purchased the chain in 1982 and gradually converted all locations to their own brand identity. The decision wasn't based on Burger Chef's failure. Hardee's wanted the established customer base and prime real estate without maintaining separate brand operations. The chain that pioneered kids' meals and burger customization became a footnote in fast food history, proving that innovation doesn't guarantee independence when larger companies decide consolidation makes more financial sense. Once giants in American dining, these vanished chains tell a story of changing tastes, bold ideas, and forgotten menus. What once felt permanent quietly disappeared, leaving behind only memories and crumbs.